Welcome back to the Practical Woodsman podcast. I'm Rut, the creator and host of the Practical Woodsman. That's right, it's my incredible genius which has brought this all into existence. Scientists, philosophers around the world studying my noggin to try to unlock its secrets. I'm happy that you're here with me for this episode of the show. We're going to be talking about cheap alternatives to expensive things. In other words, wilderness on a budget. Hacks for bushcraft and survival gear. And I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Before we get started, we got to do the musical introduction to get us all in the mood. Winkety, winkety. So don't go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Put a camp up right here.
Well, folks, a new year, a new episode of Practical Woodsman. It's so nice to be here with you. I want to make a couple quick announcements, then we'll get right into all this wonderful gear here that we're going to be talking about. The Practical Woodsman has an online community. It's at thepracticalwoodsman.locals, locals.com, where you can download the really nifty locals.com app from the App Store and then just search for The Practical Woodsman within. We got a good group of people in there, and in fact, one of them the other day was saying, this group needs to be doing a whole lot better. Freedom of speech and all that stuff, and can come in here. He was sick and tired of all the other social media stuff that he's got going on in his life, and he says this is the place to be. I agree with him. I think you all should join us. All right. Cheap alternatives to expensive things. I've got a bunch of expensive things, and you know what? A lot of the times, I prefer to use the cheap things, and that's the truth. There's no end to the things that these different companies and stuff send me to try out in the woods, and while I'm grateful for that, and I appreciate it, I hope it don't go away anytime soon. Often, it complicates rather than simplifies an approach to the woods, and it hasn't stopped me from my ways that I'm very set in as far as just certain things that I do, like keeping and reusing containers. I love containers. For a woodsman, I think containers are just fantastic. I save glass containers. I get these candles from Walmart for like $6 a piece, and when the candle's done, I just cannot bring myself to throw away that perfectly good glass jar. So I end up saving them. Let me show you some. All right, so they start off like this, and boy, I love these candles. I'll have them burning over there sometimes off camera while I'm recording these shows. But and they create a nice ambiance. But anyway, you see, it's glass, got a nice lid on it there. Cost me $6 for the candle, and when the candle burns away, I reckon a lot of people probably throw those away. And I have from time to time, but often I keep them. So here's one that I've got that's emptied, and what I'll do is I have a candle warmer or a coffee cup warmer. It's an electric. You plug it in, and you set your coffee cup on there, and it keeps your coffee hot. Well, it's another thing it's good for is you can set this candle on there, and it'll dissipate the remaining wax that's in that jar. And then I just wash her out real good, and then I can use that for all sorts of things. I got one of these in my house I keep sugar in. So when I've got guests and serve them coffee and stuff like that, I get my reused candle jar out. It's got all the sugar in it, and I can serve them sugar. I use this in my workspace to keep nuts and bolts and stuff like that, and I'm just like that. I really like containers, and if you were to go out and buy something like that, specifically not with a candle in it, but if you were to go like to the hardware store and try to find a jar like that that's made specifically to hold nuts and bolts and stuff like that, you pay a lot more than $6 if you can just take a moment out of your day and learn to reuse the jar that candle comes in. Here's another example. I've got a peanut butter, an empty plastic peanut butter jar here, and it's full of yerba mate. That's a type of Argentine or Italian tea. And I've just cleaned out that peanut butter jar there, plastic peanut butter jar with a lid and everything. And it's perfect for keeping my yerba mate tea nice and fresh in there. So I do that a lot with containers. We're going to be talking about some containers today as we go through this show. But I think I'll be able to give you some really good ideas about how to not be always chasing the most expensive, fancy, flashiest stuff. To get us started, why don't we talk about a towel? Backpacker's towel. So you can see the towel here, those of you who are watching. I realize there's a bunch of yous out there driving truck and stuff like that, just listening to the show, and I'll try to make this as interesting for you as possible and try to describe these things to you. I'm holding up here, it's marketed as a backpacker's towel. Why does there have to be such a thing as a backpacker's towel or a woodsman's towel? Why not just use a regular towel? Well, the thinking behind it is that most regular towels are made out of cotton, and cotton takes a long time to dry. Another thing about your household towel is that they're usually made out of cotton, and cotton takes a long time to dry, comparatively to other materials. So if you're a woodsman, I'll never forget. First real big backpacking trip I took, I dressed in almost all cotton. I was a woodsman, grew up in Appalachia, and I'd always wore cotton. And I didn't think nothing of it. Well, that first night I took a bath in a creek that was near the place where we set up camp. And I got out and I washed my pair of pants, and I washed the shirt, the outer shirt I was wearing, dried off with a cotton towel. And it was so hot and humid on that trip that 3-4 days later, that stuff was still not dry. So the thinking behind an outdoorsman or a traveler's towel is that it's made out of material that they call quick drying. Now, here's something maybe you all know, maybe you don't know, but I'll explain it to you. When they talk about something being quick drying, what they're really saying is that it doesn't absorb very much moisture. You've heard the people praising the benefits of wool, for example. And a lot of people believe that wool does not absorb moisture. That's not true. It'll absorb up to something like 20 or 30% moisture. But even that is considered quick drying, because 20, 30% moisture will dry a lot faster, won't it, than say a cotton sweater, which will absorb maybe 90% moisture. So just remember that when they're talking about quick drying, what they're really talking about is how much moisture does the thing absorb. And things like polyester and nylon absorb very, very little moisture. They might absorb 2%. Think about that, 2% compared to wool's 20 or 30%. So this towel here that I'm holding up is a backpacker's towel. Now, if you go into a place that sells, like an outfitter store, sells outdoor equipment, you might pay $30 for a towel like this. Got a nice little loop there on it. It's very thin. This is like a full body backpacker's towel, and I actually just took this on vacation with me, and I used it exclusively. Well, it's expensive. It feels terrible against the skin. It doesn't dry all that effectively because there's not a lot of fluff to it. It's just like, for those of you who are just listening, it's very smooth, this towel. What they'll do is that they will grab a bunch of the water and pull it off your skin, but it doesn't absorb it into the fibers. That's what I meant to communicate. So the water's just sitting there within the fibers. That's why it dries super quick, because then it's just prone to the air that's around it, and it dissipates into the air around it. They call that quick drying. But it's not a very comfortable towel, these backpackers towels. And like I said, they're expensive. They do roll up into nothing, so they're easy to pack. remember that those are really the qualities that a person's looking for in any woodsman gear. Is how heavy is it, how tough is it, how well does it roll down or pack up. So anyway, that's an option. You can go out and you can buy a specially marketed backpacker or woodsman or traveler's towel. Here's my advice to you, though. Go into the automotive section of your local Walmart or your local department store. They sell a towel, a type of towel, that's for drying your car off after you've washed it. I just went into Walmart last week to check the prices on these things again, and I saw this towel that I'm holding up now, which is much more fluffy, feels great against the skin. It mimics much more a real towel. It's just much better drying experience. But anyway, you can buy this towel here for $5. $5 from your local Walmart if you go into the automotive section and you go into where they sell like the car cleaning stuff, and you can find these cheap towels. It's made out of the same material. It's made out of polyester. It'll dry your skin. I'll tell you what, I run this across my head and my hair is dry in like 2 swipes. This stuff sucks up all of the moisture off of my head, off my body, and then just like these towels that are marketed as backpackers towels, you hang that up and within an hour it's dry. Definitely within an hour, maybe less than that. So that's what I recommend for if you want to carry a towel, and they come in handy, especially if you're going to go out somewhere and it's going to be very, very wet, and it's going to be very, very wet. Or you're going to be doing something like swimming in a pool of a stream or a creek or something like that, then that's what you want to do. You want to get a towel and carry that. These things pack down very, very small. $5. $5. So that might be something that you already have around the house. If you're younger, check with your dad. Say, Dad, you got any of those towels for drying off your car or your truck out in the garage? And he might have it, so you might not have to pay anything. Far superior to the towels that are marketed for backpackers and outdoorsmen. How about a shelter? Of course, I have my shelter that I love. It's a it's a floorless TP type style shelter, and I love it. And if you've got $300, I'd highly recommend anybody run out and get one for themselves. But let's say that you don't have $300 and you still want to go out in the woods. You want to go on a trip. Well, then, again, it does not have to be complicated. For many, many years in my life, I would just use old tarps that my dad had lying around, and I'd take that down into the woods with me. And many times what we'd do is we would build like a lean-to shelter, just the frame of a shelter out of just dead brush lying around. So again, those of you who've been following me for any length of time, I've got it puts a hair in my biscuit when I see these quote unquote bushcraft guys out there cutting perfectly good trees down. As somebody who growed up in the woods, I know that there's very, very few occasions where that is necessary. Very, very few occasions where cutting down a perfectly live tree is necessary. Most things can be done with just the branches and the trees and stuff that have died and are lying on the forest floor. So there's absolutely no need for that. But we would build like a lean-to shelter, just the frame, and then we would just cover it with one of these blue tarps. And if you don't have any of these blue tarps lying around, we would use these to cover our firewood pile. We use them to cover mechanical gear and stuff like that might be outside in snowy or rainy weather. And these things cost nothing. So those of you listening, I'm just holding up your standard blue tarp, blue plastic tarp that you can get from Walmart for, I think it's $5 or something like that. And many of you might have some of these lying around the house already, so it wouldn't be any extra cost at all for you to. And this thing, I've got it unrolled right now, so it looks a lot bigger than it is. Would you like to see me roll this down and show you how much little space this would take up in a pack? It packs down to like the size of a manila folder or something. Here, let me do that. All right, so here we go. That's that same tarp. It folds up into nothing, and it's very light. You know, you shove that down into the bottom of your pack, and you won't even know that that's there. The good thing about these is that they make you could turn this into like a what they call that, like a V-style shelter tent, just by running a cord between two trees and draping this over top of it, and then securing the corners, and there you've got like an old pup tent style shelter. You can use that as like a lean-to in a lean-to type formation. What we did, I think the last time I did something like that was that I created again just the frame of like a lean-to, and then we draped this tarp over top of that frame, and then we went around and we found like old debris and logs and stuff lying around the forest. Then we just tossed it on top so the wind wouldn't blow it away, and that works wonderful. So, you know, you can spend $300 for a shelter, and if you got $300 to do that, it's a fine thing to do. But if you don't have $300, you don't need $300. $10 will get you a blue tarp from your local department store, Walmart, anything like that. And you can buy 2 of them, or, you know, just buy one, cut it in 2. Yeah, you just take scissors, just cut the thing into the shape you want, cut it in 2, and then you've got a roof and you've got a ground tarp. So that costs hardly anything at all, and they'll take all sorts of abuse. Yeah, this thing, believe it or not, will take more abuse than my $300 teepee shelter would. I'd be much more afraid to abuse my $300 shelter than I would be to abuse this blue tarp. And so these blue tarps are very, very handy. In fact, what I might do here in the not too distant future is throw together a pack using just these household items and these cheap items and go on a 50-mile backpacking trip just to show the world that it can be just as an enjoyable experience. You can live just as comfortably out in the woods without all the fancy, highfalutin, expensive gear that exists out there. Let's talk about clothing for a second. Jackets. The way you want to dress, and this is specifically in regards to cold temperatures. So if it's very cold outside, people think, well, maybe before I go out on an excursion like that, up into the Appalachian Mountains or out on a night when it's going to be 10 degrees, what I need to do first is I need to invest in like a $300 highfalutin technical jacket that is designed and marketed specifically for that type of living, right? Maybe you've thought that way. I can tell you right now, you do not have to do that. Now, every decision you make, you're responsible for. So I take no responsibility for you listening to this show and then going off and doing something that I've said that I've done. All right, if you do that, you're responsible for that, not me. But being perfectly honest, I went on a trip here a few years back, and it was cold, boys, I'll tell you what. It was during a Thanksgiving. I went up into the mountains in Pennsylvania, way up north. My whole wardrobe probably cost $50. I mean, as far as the jackets I was wearing and everything else like that. I had no jacket that cost more than $20. The jackets that I was wearing on that trip were, I'll tell you the brand they were, Swiss Gear, I think it's called. It's this brand that Walmart sells. And so what I did was I just took 3 of them. 3 $20 jackets. I took several sweaters. I took some, under layers and things like that. And when it got really, really cold, I just put on another layer. That's the secret to staying comfortable out in the backcountry. Not some super duper expensive technical jacket that you've spent hundreds of dollars on. That just looks cool. Also, those things are well designed and well built. So I'm not saying that they have no value at all. I'm just saying that really it's marketing. For $50, I could go out into the same type of conditions and stay just as comfortable and maybe more comfortable. So what I want to show you here are a couple of Softshell fleeces that I have here. The first one I'm holding up is an orange Softshell fleece, a polyester fleece. It's from LL Bean. I paid $100 for this. $100. Look at it. It's pretty, ain't it? In fact, a little bit of pride, right? When somebody sees that LL Bean tag there and they go, ooh, this guy's wearing something from LL Bean. He must be cooler than I thought he was. Well, let me show you this other fleece here that I got. Same quality fleece. This is a blue fleece. It's the same weight. It's almost identical in quality. And I got that from Amazon for $12. $12. $12 fleece from Amazon. I think the brand is Amazon Essentials. Next to a $100 fleece that has a nice little tag there that says LL Bean. And that's the only difference. That's the only difference in quality. It's the only difference in warmth. It's the only difference in utility. You might get a slightly more specific collar that you're looking for if you pay $100 more. But that's just emotional, ain't it? It doesn't affect warmth or utility or anything like that, or quality at all. Just emotionally, you say, I'm wearing a collar that I like better than the collars that Amazon had. But the quality of the two fleeces are the same. So $12 for this Amazon fleece that I'm holding up. Now, what you're going to want underneath this fleece and on top of this fleece is layers. So underneath this fleece, you might want a long sleeve button-up shirt like I like to wear. I'll tell you why I like these button-up shirts. You know, you guys probably think that it's a costume that I wear just for the show or just for the practical woodsman. It's not a costume. This is the way I really like to dress because it offers a lot of flexibility. I hate to be cold. If it's in the summertime and let's say that it's 100 degrees outside, that's fine. But what if I go into a restaurant to eat a meal? Or what if I go into a department store to walk around and shop? What if I go into a movie theater to see a movie and they've got the air conditioning on? What if all these places have their air conditioning blasting? Well, then I freeze. So what I've learned is that if I wear a t-shirt with a button-up shirt over top of it, long sleeve button-up shirt, then I can roll up my sleeves and be perfectly comfortable in most environments. Like right now, I'm very comfortable sitting here talking to y'all wearing this outfit. If I get hot, what can I do? I can take off the outer shirt. I can roll up the sleeves. If I get cold, what can I do? I can put the outer shirt back on. I can roll down the sleeves. A lot of flexibility in this combination, and that's why I've settled on this combination, and that's why you'll see me wearing this combination a lot. Well, the more you get out into the backcountry, the more you'll realize that that flexibility is really important, because there's so many times I've gotten out of the truck and started hiking on a 3-4 day night outing in the backcountry, and it'll be 10 degrees outside with the wind blowing. Well, you get hiking along with that 30 pounds on your back, and what starts happening? You start to overheat because you've dressed for the cold that has hit you when you first got out of the truck. You weren't moving, you weren't doing any exercise, the wind was hitting you. Well, then you get moving with that weight on your back, going up and down some hills and stuff, and you start to overheat. So the most wonderful thing is to be able to take off a layer, put a layer back on, roll up your sleeves, roll down your sleeves, put on a toboggan, take off your toboggan. Gloves, take them off, stick them in your pocket, get them out of your pocket, put them back on. So that's just the nature of being out in the backcountry. Nature is not a controlled environment. And most of us living our lives day by day in the civilized world, we are used to controlled environments. If you get a little chilly at home, what do? You turn the heat up. If you get a little hot, you turn it down. So we've got our environments superficially, unnaturally, perfectly controlled in our day-to-day lives. You get out into the backcountry, you ain't got all that. So the way you do it is, the way you mimic environmental control out in the backcountry is with your clothing. So back to this fleece, this $12 fleece I got from Amazon Essentials. Wonderful fleece, really comfortable against the skin. What I would wear underneath that is a t-shirt, then maybe a long sleeve shirt over the t-shirt, then maybe one of these button-up shirts. Then I'd put on the fleece. Now, the last thing that would go on over top of this, if not maybe another fleece, you got to figure out what sort of weather conditions am I walking into, and the layers that you do bring have to be based on that, the weather conditions I'm walking into. If I'm going in the middle of August, I'm not going to take 15 layers. But if I'm going in February, even if there's a warm spell coming through, I will take up to 15 layers, because who knows what the weather will do once I get out there, and there's no way to tell what the weather's going to do. It's February. The weather could change in a second. These fleeces are soft and air passes through them. I like that. When I'm backpacking along, I like that. Hiking along, I like for the air to pass through there because I don't want to overheat, but I want to stay comfortable. But when you stop and get around camp at night, what you're going to want is a hardshell. They call them hardshells. And this is a jacket that goes over top of everything that the wind can't pass through. And usually they're made out of nylon or very tightly woven polyester. It's a harder polyester than this fleece. This fleece is made in such a way it feels soft like cotton. Your outer jacket, you don't want it to be soft in a way that air can pass through it like cotton. So right here, I'll show you what I mean. This doubles as like a rain repellent coat. I think it's made out of nylon. I got this from REI Co-op, which is an outfitter store here in the United States. This jacket cost me about $100 because, again, it comes in a really sporty collar and it's got REI printed on the chest. Well, so I'm paying $100 for the privilege of walking around with REI on the chest and being able to get it in just the coolest collar I can find. $100. Do you have to spend $100 on an outer coat like this that will block wind and keep the wind from carrying away your body heat? See, that's the thing about these soft fleeces. The body heat that is accumulated between your body and the inner part of that fleece, when wind passes through it, it takes that heat and carries it away. So that's why you get cold. So by putting on a hard shell jacket on the outside, then you prevent the wind from doing that. Whatever heat accumulates underneath your layers stays there. And that's great for sitting around the campfire, sitting stationary around camp, or even just sitting inside of your shelter. So anyway, this REI jacket, do you need to spend $100? No, you don't. Let me show you another one. Here's another jacket that is exactly of the same type. I mean exactly. Cost me $47 from Amazon. But you say, wait a second, $47 is still expensive, right? And I don't have $47. So I guess I'm out of luck, ain't I? No, you aren't. Because remember the principle. The principle is just an outer hard shell that the wind can't penetrate. Can you think of any other things that might be very low cost that will do that same thing? Yeah, I can. Any $5 rain jacket from any Walmart. So you just go, you find a rain jacket. I think you can find them, like if you go into the camping section of Walmart, you can find them for $2, $3. And basically it's just an outer plastic jacket. That would work just as well. But remember, you're going to sweat in something like that, so it's not something you're going to want to be hiking or doing a bunch of work around camp in. This is for when you've stopped working, you're sitting around camp, you've got all your layers on, you've got your fleece on, and then now you want to cap it all off with something that will just keep wind from passing through and taking your body heat out. So there's some ideas about jackets. And I should be showing you some pictures and stuff of this trip that I took where I literally, I think my whole jacket system for that trip, which the weather was like 8 degrees or something, Fahrenheit. Probably $20, $30, $50, maybe max. And it was just a layering system. I didn't have the money then to run out and buy a $100 jacket. But it didn't stop me from going out, because I knew all I had to do was just understand the nature of what, what's the nature of what a $100 jacket is doing for me. What are the materials? What's the nature of that jacket? What's it doing? And then I find another jacket that will do the same thing, that shares that same nature. Onto these walking sticks. So here you see is really fancy pantsy walking stick. It telescopes. It's got clips on it there. You can make it compact if you want to, and you can spend up to $100 on these silly, stupid things. Any of you who's been following me for any length of time already know my feelings on these stupid, ridiculous walking sticks. Let's say you don't have $100 for one of these wonderful, ridiculous hiking sticks that got the really nice cork handle, ergonomic handles, and telescoping parts and all that stuff. Well, let me tell you, I used one of these one time, and because they telescope, I never feel completely confident resting my entire body weight on one of these things to begin with. I think they're ridiculous. I think they're completely unnecessary. I never feel completely confident resting my entire body weight plus the 30 pounds on my back down on this thing, because I say to myself, that telescoping part could give at any second. It could just collapse, and then there I go down the side of the mountain. So anyway, you don't have $100 for one of these fancy pantsy walking sticks. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Maybe you can start a GoFundMe and buy yourself one of these stupid walking sticks. I got a better idea. It's this right here. Yeah, it's a real stick. It's an actual stick. And I'll tell you about this actual stick that I'm holding up to the camera here for those of you who are just listening. This stick is 10 years old. I went out on a trip with my old buddy Bradbury, my late dog, best dog I ever did have. And we woke up the next morning after we got started late, woke up the next morning, and I saw that a tree had been knocked down. I don't know if it had been knocked down by somebody or if it had been knocked down natural like, but it was still alive. The tree was still alive, and it had several really nice portions on it that I thought that were quite straight, and I thought, well, this is a perfect time for me to harvest off that old damaged tree that's been knocked down, one of those limbs or one of those portions of that tree. And what I did was I cut myself off a portion, and then what I did after that was I measured that portion perfectly to the height of my shelter. So a lot of people say that they like to carry these man-made walking sticks because they use them to pitch their shelters. Okay, it's fine. A real stick will do the same thing. So because the primary shelter that I use is a floorless teepee style shelter, in order to pitch it, the only thing I got to do is I just stake down the corners, and then some kind of pole has to go up the middle, and that creates its structure. And so this walking stick you see me holding right here, that's 10 years old and still strong as it ever was, I measured that out to exactly the height for my shelter. So I can hike along with that all day, and at the end of the day, there's my post for my center pole of my shelter. And these walking staffs, we call them staffs. These walking staffs are so much superior to the man-made walking sticks you can get. If you're going down a mountain or something like that, instead of using this like a ski, you can actually grab a hold of it with two hands and just kind of catapult yourself down the mountain, or kind of walk yourself down this staff as you're going down a mountain. It's much superior, and this thing is not going to break on my body weight. It doesn't matter if I'm carrying 50 pounds on my back or 100 pounds on my back. This thing will hold me. There's your free option. Now, I don't want you all running out chopping down perfectly good trees for a hiking staff, but what you can do is you can find a tree that's already been knocked down but that it's still alive. and then you just find a nice portion of that tree or of a branch or something, and you harvest that. Cut it to length, and then you'll have yourself a perfect hiking stick for years, I mean, this thing will still be solid another 10 years from now. You'll see it when I do Practical Woodsman shows. It'll be there in the background where all my decorations are back there in the back. But yeah, in fact, this stick now has some sentimental value to it because my buddy Bradbury's no longer around. And every time I use it, of course, I remember that trip where I got this staff. Another thing is you'll see a lot of people hiking with staves and hiking sticks and stuff that they've bought from some gift shop at like a national park. They're all nicely polished and got little rubber stoppers at the bottom of them and stuff like that. I think those are pretty ridiculous when, you can just go out in the woods and find not a dead tree, but a knocked over tree or that's been knocked over in a storm or by an animal or something. And then you got your staff for free. So there you go. No cost for a staff or a walking stick. There's a brand, I think it's called Hydropack. Hydrapak. And they sell these silicone bladders that collapse to nothing. They come in like 1 liter, 2 liter, 3 liters. I think they go all the way up to 5 liters. And the idea of this is, let's say that you come to a water source and it's still early in the day. You want to keep on hiking, but you don't know if there's going to be water in the next 2 hours of where you're hiking to. You want to make sure you've got plenty of water for that night. Well, you can stop and you can fill up your Hydropack, this water silicone bladder, and then you can carry 3 liters of water with you up to that campsite, and then you make sure you got water all night. The Hydropacks can be expensive. What if you want to be prepared in that way, but you can't afford a Hydropack, or you don't want to spend the money for a highfalutin Hydropack? Are there any options for that? Yeah, there are. I like to save empty milk jugs. I think they come in handy for a lot of things, and this is something I've actually done in the past before they invented Hydropacks. What I would do is I'd take an empty milk jug and I'd crush it. Take the lid off, make sure you rinse her out real good, and then I would crush it like this. And then I would put the lid back on. There you go. This collapsed milk jug now will fit really nice in my pack. Or another option is you just take the handle of the milk jug, you take one of these C-clamps, what do they call these? Carabiner. So you can take a carabiner and you can hook it through the handle of your milk jug, and then you can actually hang that from the outside of your pack. An empty milk jug doesn't weigh anything. So it's there if you need it. And then if you need to get yourself a big supply of water, a gallon supply of water, and bring that back to your camp, you've got this. Now, I acknowledge that's not the prettiest thing in the world. But if you're out in the backcountry, you're more concerned, you should be more concerned about whether something is useful, how's its utility. You should be worried much more about that than how it looks. And honestly, anybody who would see you hiking along and would laugh at you for having a collapsed milk jug hanging from the back of your backpack, those people have never done anything serious. You're looking at these cityfied hippie backpacker sorts who, don't even get dirty when they go into the woods. So their opinions don't really matter anyway. But I've used this many times. Used this a lot when I was growing up. Used it on I think it was a 5-day, 4-night outing just several years back. And so that's a very low cost alternative to one of those expensive Hydropacks that are very popular today. When you get to a spring or a creek or a water source and you want to use this milk jug, you've crushed it down so that it's easy to pack away. What do you do now? What you do is you take the lid off of it, and then you just blow it, you just inflate it with your mouth like this. And there you go. You can fill that with water, cap it, and carry that back to your camp. And, you know, one of these milk jugs, they're not going to last indefinitely being crushed and reinflated like that forever. Eventually that plastic will get brittle and break. But it definitely lasts a week or even a couple week long excursion into the backcountry. And it costs next to nothing. I like to collect and save empty milk jugs for lots of different purposes. We'll talk about that on another day. Just real quick, I wanted to talk about eggs. Let's say that you take eggs into the backcountry. First of all, you're not going to take refrigerated eggs, right? I hope most of you know not to do that. Now, you'll get sick if you're out very long for very many days and you've taken eggs that were previously refrigerated and washed. You don't want to do that. Now, if you've got a friend or if you have chickens and you can get some eggs that were never refrigerated that are natural, come right out of the hen house, then they don't need to be refrigerated. You can just take the eggs along, and those are the eggs that I take. If I take eggs with me out on an excursion into the backcountry, that's the type of eggs I'm taking. I'm not taking store-bought eggs. I don't personally raise chickens here, but I have a buddy who does, and so I'll go over to his house and I'll bag a couple, eggs off of him, a dozen eggs off of him, get them right out of the hen house, and then I can take those out into the backcountry, and they last for days and days and days. But they sell different things for carrying eggs, like this case here, this plastic case. And they got these little tabs here. Let me get some eggs so that I can show this off. All right, so I've got a couple of eggs here. I want to show off how they work in these containers. These containers that are specifically sold for transporting eggs. The way they work is they've got tabs that hold those eggs from moving around and everything like that. Now, I will tell you, in my experience, you still run a risk of breaking those eggs. In a rough and tumble backpack, it's awfully hard to keep eggs from breaking. Coleman famously sells these egg carriers. You might remember them, haven't seen them. They're yellow, made out of hard plastic. Here's one that carries 6 eggs. When it comes to those Coleman carriers, I prefer buying a couple of the containers that just carry 2 eggs. It fits better in a pack. You see, if you've got 6 eggs, then that thing is going to take up space in a pack as it is, in that shape. But if you're carrying a 2-egg carrier, then you can take a couple of them, and then you can just fit those down in your pack wherever you want them to go. They don't have to go in as like one big solid block. But here's the Coleman egg carrier that I'm showing off here. And these work the same way. Put your eggs in there like that. Then it clips like that. And again, they wobble around in there a little bit. There's still the possibility of those getting broke. So let's say that you can't afford an egg carrier. Is there any solutions to that? There is. All you need is a container. So even like an empty plastic peanut butter jar would work just fine for this. Any container that'll fit 2 eggs. And I'm just going to use a container here that I just happen to have empty. And this method, by the way, offers some benefits that the other, like those Coleman carriers, don't offer. What you do is you take some rice and you put some rice in your container. Put your eggs in there. Put some space between those eggs like that. And then you fill that up with rice. You carry, depending on the size of your carrier, you can take 2 eggs, 3 eggs, 6 eggs. Just depends on the size of your carrier. There you go. And so now your eggs are not going to break while you're transporting them. As long as they're in that rice, that'll cushion those eggs, and you won't have to worry about them breaking. So as long as you've got some rice and a container, then you don't need a special egg carrier. Now, what are the extra benefits of this? The extra benefits of it is that you're carrying rice. So there's some of your food right there, along with those eggs, and you're carrying them both together in the same container. Zero cost for that solution. Let's talk for a second about water purification. You could always go to the store or get on the internet and you can buy these iodine tablets. These iodine tablets are for purifying water, and what you do is you drop in one tablet, you wait 30 minutes, then you drop in the other tablet and you wait about 5 minutes. And what the first tablet does is it purifies the water with the iodine. What the second tablet does is it takes the iodine taste out of the water. Of course, that can turn into a big expense. These things aren't cheap. Those of you who watching the video can see that's just a very little container. And I'm not sure how many iodine tablets are in there, maybe a dozen or so. But, you know, it can turn into a big expense, because every time you open one of those up, if a month goes by before you go out again, if you want to make sure that your tablets are working, you need to buy brand new tablets. Because once you open the bottle, then the fidelity of that stuff starts to become questionable over time. So let's say that you don't want to spend money on these iodine tablets. Is there anything you can do? There is. I've stayed in a hotel, and here I've saved a little mouthwash bottle. It's still got the mouthwash in it. What I could do is I can empty this mouthwash bottle, and then I could just fill that back up with bleach. Did you know that just a couple drops of bleach in your bottle does the same thing as those iodine tablets? Any bleach, Clorox. So I've done that before. It works just fine. It's as effective as those iodine tablets. And all you need is a little container to carry that bleach in. And then what you'd do is you'd open up your water bottle. Usually, most water bottles are about 1 liter. And so I'd open up my 1 liter water bottle here, and assuming that I've got bleach in this little container that I took from a hotel that used to have mouthwash in it. Then what I just do is drip, couple drips of that Clorox or bleach into my bottle, cap that up, shake my bottle up, wait about 30 minutes, and then that water's good to drink. I was able to do that with just the bleach I already had at home. So there's no extra cost for that, is there? I don't think a bottle of bleach costs but $1. If you go to the dollar store, you can buy a bottle of bleach for $1. So there you go. $1 compared to something like 10 or 20 bucks for these iodine tablets. I got a really nice set of titanium chopsticks here. I'll tell you, chopsticks really come in handy in the woods. And I'll tell you why. A lot of what you're going to eat is pasta and stuff like that you're going to prepare out in the woods. So I always like to eat pasta with my chopsticks. So here's a pair of titanium chopsticks that I'm holding up for the camera. You know, you have to buy those. You're not going to find those just lying around in titanium. Is there any alternatives? Well, you might think, oh, I'll just cut off a couple sticks, like a couple twigs off of a tree or something, and I'll use those as chopsticks. I've done that. It doesn't work very great. It doesn't work very great. The way that chopsticks work is the way they're tapered from the back end to the point. That tapering is what makes them so effective, and plus their straightness. You wouldn't think that their straightness and that tapering would be so important, but it is. So, you know, you can give it a try for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it, but what I've learned is that in theory, in my brain, it works a lot better than in reality. When you just go out into the woods and you just pick up a couple of sticks and try to use them as chopsticks, they don't work very well. So let's say that you can't afford these titanium chopsticks. Do you have any options? Yeah, the next time you're at a Chinese restaurant or a Japanese restaurant, they'll have a bunch of these wooden chopsticks in little packages, and you just ask for them. So let's say that you've sat down, and usually if they see me in my white gringo face, they say, he probably wants a fork. So I have to actually ask, do you mind bringing me some chopsticks? And they'll bring me these wooden chopsticks in the packaging that I just showed off for the camera. And all you have to say is, can you bring me an extra set? And they'll gladly do that. These little cheap wooden chopsticks cost them nothing. So get yourself some chopsticks the next time you're at a Chinese restaurant, and then just throw them into your pack, and there you've got a free set of chopsticks to take out into the woods with you. Let me tell you something about wood. Wood is naturally antibacterial and antimicrobial. I don't know if a lot of you knew that. The cutting board that I use out in the woods is wooden. It's just a piece of wood for a reason. I might be able to save a little bit of weight if I take a plastic cutting board. I don't want to take a plastic cutting board. It breeds bacteria and all sorts of things. I like to use wood when I can, or titanium, but I actually prefer wood even over the titanium. So there you go. I spent a bunch of money on these titanium chopsticks. I got a set of 2. You don't have to. You can get them for free next time you go to a Chinese restaurant. All right? Oh, another thing I was going to tell you about these chopsticks, the reason why they're so useful. If you're cooking on a skillet in the morning, let's say you're cooking bacon or something, these chopsticks are fantastic for reaching down into the skillet, grabbing that bacon and flipping it over, flipping sausage over, flipping anything you're cooking on a skillet. Even in a cook pot, your chopsticks are fantastic for reaching down into the pot, moving things around, turning things over, and that sort of thing. So I always try to carry chopsticks with me out in the backcountry. How about a container for carrying like cooking oil, stuff like that? You need a special container like this, don't you, that I'm holding up? A container it's like a travel container. It's specifically made as a squeeze bottle with a nice flip-up lid on it and everything. You need something like that, don't you? I mean, you need to go out and spend money for something specifically made for putting stuff like that in it, don't you? No, not necessarily. You probably got something like a container of honey at home, and that's what I've done. I've emptied out this old empty honey jar. It's a plastic jar with a flip lid at the top, squeeze lid at the top. So I've emptied out and cleaned all the honey out of it, and now I've filled it with olive oil for cooking. So I didn't have to buy a special container to carry my cooking oil. I just found a container that I already had at home, and I used that. It's got a nice big lid on there, carries a nice amount of cooking oil, and it doesn't leak, and it cost me no extra money. I bought honey, used the honey, kept the container, and now it's my olive oil container for the woods. They sell a lot of specialized pots and pans and cooking utensils for people who enjoy the woods. You can end up spending a bunch of money on skillets specifically designed for woodsmen. And I'll tell you what, they're usually inferior to just a regular fry pan or skillet that you can buy at Walmart for $5. So I bought this. It's an aluminum pot grabber that I bought on Amazon several years back for $3-4. They're worth having. But if you can't afford $3 or $4 for a pot grabber, are you out of luck? No, not if you've got a pair of needle nose pliers somewhere in a toolbox, or your dad's got a pair of old needle nose pliers out in a toolbox that he don't mind you taking into the woods with you. They'll replace these pot grabbers. Here's a pair of needle nose pliers that I got from my own toolbox. And all you need that for is for grabbing the pot, lifting that off the fire, moving that around. And they'll also do that just fine. They'll do it as well as the pot grabber does. But the pot grabber does weigh a little less, so that's nice. This is the cook pot that's currently in my pack. It's made out of aluminum. It's got a nice body to it. It's got non-stick surface on the inside. Probably looking at $20 there, or $30 for this cook pan, fry pan, that's marketed to outdoorsmen. It had its own handle on it, its own handle that would fold out of the way. I took that off there because I didn't trust it. I trust the pot grabber more than I trust that foldable handle. Can you imagine carrying this fry pan full of hot bacon grease or something and having that handle give out on you or fold while you're carrying it across camp, and then just dousing yourself with boiling bacon grease? No, I can't imagine that either. So I've done away with it. So anyway, you can buy specialized pots and pans for this, but let me show you. Several years back, I went to Walmart and I spent $10 for this actual fry pan from Walmart, just from the kitchen, or the kitchen section of Walmart. It's not marketed to backpackers. It had a long handle on it. I cut the handle off, and it's actually better quality, more robust, cooks better, has a better plate on the bottom of it for even cooking, and it works perfect with my little aluminum pot grabber here. So there's a very low cost way to get yourself a really nice fry pan, a much superior fry pan to these ones that are designed and marketed specifically for outdoorsmen or backpackers. I like quality in my gear, even when I'm going the cheap route. I like things to be quality if I can do so. There's no reason to settle for something cheap if you don't have to. And finally, I have a wonderful and beautiful titanium cook pot here I'm going to show off. Probably cost something like $50, $70, $80 maybe. This titanium cook pot with a bail handle and some handles on the side. You've seen me cook all sorts of things. I cooked several years back. I cooked some old pokeweed. Cooked myself a pokeweed salad in this pot, and I really do love this pot. But let's say you can't afford $80 for a cook pot. Is there nothing you can do? Well, you already know the answer to that. I have a solution for you. It's not going to look as cool as my titanium cook pot, but it'll do the trick. Here's an old tin of coffee, and this is Café du Monde from the original French market in Louisiana. I think so. The coffee cost me $10. It's still got some coffee in it. It's even got its plastic lid there on the top. That's your cook pot right there. And I'll tell you what you can do is you can drill some holes in the side, take those needle nose pliers that we just showed off, and you can bend an old clothes hanger into a handle that will fit right into those holes that you drill into the side of that coffee container, and then you'll have yourself a hanging cook pot. Hobos use these coffee tins and stuff for cooking for a long 100 years, and what's good for them is good for us too. It'd work just fine. That'd take fire, you put that right into the fire and cook inside of that, no problem at all. In fact, instead of just limiting ourselves to thinking of this as a potential cook pot, here's another thing you can do with it. What I'm holding up for everybody is a stove, a small stainless steel stove that you can take outside. You can throw all kinds of little sticks and stuff in there, and you can have a stove. Even when there's a fire ban and you can't start any fires on the ground, you can still use this stove. And you're looking at $100 for this thing. Got a bunch of different parts. Wonderful little portable wood stove. This coffee tin will do the same thing as this $100 cook stove. All you got to do to make this into a nice portable cook stove is you just got to puncture some holes down and along the bottom. So just puncture some holes 2 inches apart around the bottom of this coffee tin, and you set that up on a couple rocks, and there's your cook stove. It will work just as effectively as this one that is designed and marketed for that purpose. So that costs you nothing if you've already got a coffee tin in your house. It makes a wonderful cook pot, and like I said, what you do is you drill a couple holes at the top, bend a clothes hanger to make a hanging handle at the top of that coffee tin. And then you can set up a tripod, cook some soup over top of fire. You could just jam that into the fire, cook it that way, and reach in, pull it out with that clothes hanger bail handle that you've built into the coffee tin. Now, I didn't want to... Oh, you want to save the lid too. I'll tell you why. Because after you get done cooking in your little coffee tin cook pot, and you set that aside, and you've got leftovers, and you don't want the critters and stuff crawling in there, what can you do? You can just put that plastic lid right back on top of that coffee tin cook pot and keep the critters and stuff from getting into your food overnight. That's a beautiful idea. I'm going to do that, and I will be making a video about that eventually. Now here I've got a can of sliced peaches in a sealed can, and we're going to do that. We're going to put a handle on this because maybe you don't have a fancy cook mug, right? Like a drinking cook mug to drink your coffee in, stuff like that. So I thought what we would do is we would take this can of sliced peaches, empty that out, clean that out a little bit, and we're going to drill some holes in there, and we're going to do exactly what I described with the coffee tin. But we're just going to do it for this smaller can here, which also could be used as a small cook pot. This is what I use when I'm out into the woods. Use my NATO water bottle, and it's my BCB water bottle, British water bottle, and my stainless steel NATO mug. What do they call that? Can't remember what they call that mug. Anyway, it's bomb proof. It's wonderful. Maybe you can't afford to buy something like this right now, or maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money on something like that right now. So what I'm thinking is that this tin can of sliced peaches could replace something like this just fine. Let's do it. Let's empty out these peaches. All right, dogs are enjoying the peaches. Got a towel here. I'm going to put that inside the can and try to get some of that juice out of there. Got to be careful not to cut my fingers as I'm cleaning that out, because that's got a sharp edge on the inside there. All right, pretty good. Let's see if we can get some of this paper off from around the outside of the can. It doesn't matter, because if I'm cooking in a fire with that, it'd burn right off. There we go. So you all see the can now that I have. There's a perfect drinking mug that can withstand the rigors of the fire. We're going to make it into a little cook pot here with there we go. It's not perfect, but we got her done. Went in a little deep. That I'm getting in a hurry. I feel like I'm running out of time here. Going overtime. I've got some old wire here, and I got some clippers. We're going to clip off a section of this old wire, and what we want to do is make a bail handle for this little cook pot. All right. Still got our can here, and what we're going to do is like that, and like this, There's our needle nose pliers. All right. There we go. So now we got a cook pot that we can hang over the fire. So you've got things like this hanging around your house all over the place, and you know, it looks a little more rustic than, for example, cooking in something like this BCB adventure mug. But there's something sweet about reusing gear like you've just got around the house. You bend that down. You can even pack that full of stuff. Then you get around the fire. You've got your bail handle there, and you can cook. You can put that right in the fire. You can drink straight out of that. Move the bail handle out of the way. Drink straight out of that. Cook out of that. I think it's a beautiful thing. So anyway, that was what I just showed you here. For those of you who are just, again, listening, I forget that there's people just listening, can't see what I'm doing. So I've put a bail handle. I just took some wire that I had off of an old like chicken fence and snipped it. And I took my needle nose pliers and I shaped it the way I wanted it to into a bail handle. Drilled 2 holes into this old can of peaches and fixed that wire there through there. Now I got a bail handle on that can, and so that could be my mug, my drinking mug. How about a water bottle? Do I need something fancy like a British or a NATO water bottle or a canteen? No, any plastic bottle will do. And look at that. That fits right down in there. So that's probably not I'd probably prefer a water bottle that would carry more water than that. But if that's all you've got, and you could find something like that lying by the side of the road. So all you got to be able to do is transport water. That's all. So even just this old regular plastic water bottle, what I'm showing everybody is it fits right down into that reused can of peaches, which is now my cook pot. And so there I've got my water bottle and a mug combo. It cost me nothing. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Practical Woodsman. There's a bunch of other things I was hoping to show you all as far as cheap alternatives to expensive things, but maybe we'll do a part 2 of this someday, and I'll be able to show those things off as well. But I think we've been able to show off some of the really good things that I wanted to talk about, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm trying to think of something clever to say. Me at a loss for something clever to say. That's almost unheard of. It must be the smartest thing to do is to not say anything. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next episode of Practical Woodsman. Y'all take care, and I'll see you next time.